We need goals because they help keep the world together and at least roughly on track, because we argue about so many things. Agreeing on a few things is extremely important. My own experience during the past decade as a special advisor to UN Secretary General, first Kofi Annan, now Ban Ki-moon, on the Millennium Development Goals has really convinced me that having global goals to fight poverty, hunger, and disease has really mobilized action. It's opened eyes. It's alerted people to issues that they might not have thought about. It's energized people. It said, oh, we can fight poverty. And not only can we do it and should do it, but there's some very practical things to do. It's reoriented governments. It's helped development agencies such as CETA or USAID or the World Bank or DFID and others also be better partners, more effective partners with low-income countries, with governments, and with civil society. So I'm a big fan of such goals. And I think the time is absolutely right for goals on sustainable development. We had, for example, Agenda 21 in the Rio conference in 1992, but Agenda 21 is hundreds of pages. It's a technical manual that only the technicians and the specialists ever knew about, whereas the broad public society did not get engaged, did not say, this is for us, this is what it means. And because of that, I think in part, the three big treaties that were agreed in 1992 in Rio on climate change, on desertification, on biological diversity, never had the broad public support behind them that energized a generation to say, these are our objectives. This is what we need to do on sustainable development. We should have done it 20 years ago. We need to do it now. Things are more urgent than they were in 1992. We lost 20 years, in effect, to change the direction of the world economy in crucial areas and our own awareness and behavior. I think sustainable development goals in some form can help us to get back on track.
Now, this is Jeffrey Sachs. And Jeffrey Sachs is the leader. He's a professor at Columbia University. And he's talking about the Sustainable Development Goals, right? The SDGs, as they are popularly called. Now, we must look at this guy here, that's Jeffrey Sachs, as the person that is literally like Miss Mia Motley of Barbados. They are about climate change, and that's their message to the world, to unite the world together. But they have to use what you call the sustainability goals so that they can be able to unite all of us. Because people don't want to be united into a world. But the fact of the matter, if we're all facing water shortages, if we're facing criminality, if we're facing droughts and pandemics, then they can justify the reason for which they are seeking to unite the world under one umbrella of a Luciferian state. So good evening and good afternoon. Welcome back to the program. And this afternoon, we are tackling a topic that at first glance may seem like four separate issues, but are they really? Around the world, we are hearing more about water shortages. At the same time, artificial intelligence expanding at an unprecedented pace, and the massive data centers powering that revolution require enormous amounts of electricity and in many cases, significant quantities of water for cooling. Meanwhile, governments, pharmaceutical companies, and international organizations continue to invest billions of dollars in pandemic preparedness and the development of new vaccines in anticipation of future disease outbreaks. So is this simply the natural evolution of technology and public health, or are these developments converging in ways that deserve closer scrutiny? Are governments planning adequately for the future? Are we managing our natural resources wisely? What trade-offs are being made between technological advancement, environmental sustainability, and public health? And who ultimately bears the cost of these decisions? These are not questions with simple answers. They require evidence, careful analysis, and an open discussion. This afternoon, we'll examine the facts, consider different perspectives, and separate what is well supported by evidence from what remains speculation, or debate. As always, this program is about encouraging critical thinking and critical awareness. You don't have to agree with me, and I don't expect everyone to reach the same conclusions. But I do hope you'll engage with the evidence, challenge assumptions, including my own, and participate respectfully in the discussion. So let's get started. Water crisis, AI, and future pandemics, coincidence or poor planning? Now, this morning, there's an article coming out of the Jamaica newspaper, The Gleaner, which is saying that water watch, wasting prohibition looms as Jamaica battles prolonged drought. So they're telling us that in Jamaica, they are having severe water crisis. The government is not ruling out implementing a prohibition order against water wasting to mitigate against drought conditions that are expected to continue into the next 3 months. So they can tell you what, when, and how you can use your water. Speaking at a press conference on Thursday, Minister of Water, Environment, and Climate Change, Matthew Samuda, announced that the prohibition will take effect on August 10, saying the measure is essential to ensuring a smooth start to the new academic year. We will take the measures that we absolutely need to ensure that we are able to safeguard the reopening of schools in September and not contribute to learning loss, he said. A prohibition order in Jamaica is a legal ban issued by the National Water Commission, NWC, to stop the waste of excessive use of potable water for non-essential tasks during severe droughts. And we're already hearing of vehicles by the use of a hose. We do hope that the situation will change, but with the information that we have, this is the best decision that we can make at this time. This is what he's saying. But there was a clipping here, which I want to show you, that was suggesting here that there is no real water shortage in Jamaica, right? What we have is a lack of proper water management. People don't, the government does not want to manage our water or resources well. So what they're saying to us is that we have to be able to sacrifice the use of water, but that is not exactly what they want to do. They want to control. And I want you to listen to this and look at what the guy is saying here, because it makes a whole lot of sense what he is suggesting. So let us look at this video here. We don't have a water shortage, this guy is saying. Let me put it up on the screen.
Talking about Jamaica doesn't have a rainfall problem. We have a water management problem. Now, our island receives abundant rainfall every year and has more than 100 rivers. In fact, Jamaica has far more natural freshwater resources than many other Caribbean islands. Let that sink in. Now, look at Barbados. It has no permanent rivers, yet it has invested for decades in reservoirs, groundwater management, rainwater harvesting, and water conservation to make the most of every single drop. Now, meanwhile, what has Jamaica done? Jamaica, for many years up to now, billions of gallons of rainwater flow through our rivers and into the sea every year because we don't capture and store enough of it. And when you go in places like Portland, certain places like St. Thomas, you go down to River Fall, you see all that water run to the sea. Now, at the same time, we are seeing massive housing developments, expanding towns, major road projects, hotels, and other large construction projects that will increase demand for water. We are also hearing about more water lockoffs and restrictions affecting communities across the island. So here's the question. If we know demand for water is growing, why aren't we seeing the same level of investment in new reservoirs, water storage, watershed protection, rainwater harvesting, and modern distribution system? Why? Building more homes without significantly expanding the water supply is like adding more passengers to a bus without buying more buses. So overcrowding. Problems. Climate change will make rainfall less predictable, with longer dry spells and heavier downpours. Now that makes water storage even more important, people. Jamaica doesn't need more rain. Don't need more rain. Because we're getting a good amount of rain. Jamaica needs a long-term plan to capture, to protect, to store and deliver the water we already receive. Now, because water security isn't about how much rain falls, it's about how well a country manages the water it has. So I put this question to you. What do you think? Should expanding Jamaica's water supply become a national priority? What's your thoughts? Comment below and share this video and save it and follow my page. Have a wonderful night now.
No, it is not the priority of the governments, whether in Jamaica or Barbados or throughout the world, including in the United States, to manage our waters well. And we're going to come to the United States and we're going to see the same problem is happening there, and there is going to be serious drought, and people are going to be managed in terms of the use of the water that is there. So we have to be very, very knowledgeable of what is happening. They create pandemics, so they can also create droughts or situations of drought to control us. And that is what this is all about. This is no real water shortages, but the water shortage will be created, manufactured, so that government can control your every movement. And this is what you've got to understand. So this could be the next pandemic. Water shortages, because that can lead into what? Diseases. And when you have diseases, pandemics, vaccines, and other things that the government will actually be imposing upon you. So please take this conversation extremely seriously. Now, we are hearing from the drought.gov. They're saying that following a wetter than normal late winter and early spring, conditions across the U.S. Caribbean dried significantly through May, June, and July. The region is experiencing near record warmth and dryness, which has triggered grass fires and critically low stream levels. Depleting water supplies in major reservoirs and underground wells are causing significant economic losses across the agricultural sector. So we have Puerto Rico impacts. In Puerto Rico, diminishing surface and groundwater levels have triggered water rationing for agricultural users in South Central and Southwest regions, as well as for residents in parts of the Northeast. The frequency of brush fires has surged, and more than 300 reports in July alone. We have also in U.S. Virgin Islands impacts across the U.S. Virgin Islands. Vegetation shows clear signs of stress, and there is not enough water for residents to fill their cisterns. The dry soils and lack of precipitation impacted specialty row and fruit tree farmers. So we're seeing every part of the Caribbean islands, they're telling us that there is going to be a water crisis. Now, what is happening in other parts of the world? Let us move to the United States to see what is really happening in some of the states in the United States. People are actually complaining that they too are facing severe water restrictions. Let's start with Texas. There is a thing I have saved here on what is happening in Texas. But before we go there, let us look at what Bill Gates is saying about, and Jeff Bezos are saying about water rights, okay, and water rights and what is happening in terms of Bill Gates buying up all the farmland and
the answer is a United States water reserve, a government-backed water bank. Now, I know what you're thinking, the same government that brought us the post office, the VA, the IRS, and FEMA's response to a hurricane. That government is going to manage the world's water supply. What could possibly go wrong? Let's start with a quick audit of government excellence, healthcare. The United States spends more per person than any country on earth, and we have worse outcomes than Cuba. Education, we spend $800 billion a year, and American students rank 36th in math, behind Estonia. The military, $886 billion a year, and we lost a 20-year war to an insurgency that flew on scooters. Infrastructure, the American Society of Civil Engineers gives our water systems a grade of D-, lead pipes, raw sewage, chemical spills, and Bill Gates wants to hand them the keys to the global water supply. Now let's talk about the actual plan. It's called the Strategic Water Reserve Act. $50 billion to secure water rights across 14 states, 5 million acre-feet, and the water rights are being consolidated into a digital tracking system, which is a fancy way of saying someone is building a registry to monitor every drop across the country. And guess who has been buying water rights for the last decade? Bill Gates is the largest private farmland owner in the United States. 270,000 acres, all sitting on productive groundwater. Michael Burry, BlackRock, the wonderful company. They've been accumulating aquifers and river rights for years, and now the government is going to inject $50 billion into a market they already control. That is not a solution to a crisis. That is a bailout for billionaires who bought the wrong asset class and need a government-funded exit strategy.
Jeff Bezos is also calling for water shortages. So what about the billionaires of the world telling us that we're going to have water shortages and they're buying up all the farmlands and the water rights? Should we also not be concerned, have post-pandemic and what happened after the pandemic? Let's go to
limits AI's potential. That is exactly why those who throw a few $1,000s into the United States Water Reserve now are going to become very wealthy.
That's exactly what Jeff Bezos leaked yesterday. It's already on Coinbase and it's called USWR, United States Water Reserve. And it's going absolutely crazy right now, as more and more people are starting to find out about this. Still, nobody's really understand what is happening yet. Stay with me. The United States Water Reserve is all of America's water supply in one single asset. And we have very early access to it right now. Now, when this gets released to the public, the price of this will go absolutely insane. Now, it was shown here in this Fox News alert that Trump already announced this in a 60-minute interview. It is already tradable on Coinbase and they do not want you to know about this yet. Bezos himself on multiple interviews confirmed that human water consumption is limiting AI's potential, meaning that the elites are pushing for a global water breakdown. This is all to leave room for AI. It's because AI requires an enormous amounts of water to cool the data centers. AI is the very technology that is phasing out the need for human intelligence. I don't know about you, but this is beyond scary. Here's exactly why billionaires have been buying into water for years. They're all about to do the exact same thing with USWR. Literally hours ago, the United Nations warns that AI will drink as much water as 1.3 billion people by 2030. So I dug deeper into BlackRock's public portfolio and sitting right there was USWR. Exact same asset that Trump is about to announce to America. And this is where I personally went all in and deployed $10,000 of my own capital. Displayed clearly at the very top, Trump is set to announce this on July 4th. Trump formally announces the Strategic Water Reserve Framework. This thing will go insane. We're looking at a 1000x by July 4th. Before you go adding this to your portfolio, make sure it is the correct one and matches this CA. Because there are a lot of scammers trying to make fakes about this.
Okay, so we're seeing here where they are privatizing all the resources of the world. Wars are privatized, pandemics are privatized, vaccines are privatized, and very soon, even our food, the very clothes, the very lands that we have will be privatized for billionaires. And this is what we call sustainable development. But let's look at what the goal is. We have the sixth goal of the sustainable development is to ensure access to water and sanitation for all. But remember, when they're telling us that they want, what they want to do is the opposite. Always remember when the United Nations speaks and their sustainable development goals, the SDGs, that they are, you have to think about the opposite of what they want to accomplish. Access to safe water, sanitation, and hygiene is the most basic human need for health and well-being. Demand for water is rising owing to rapid population growth, urbanization, and increasing water needs from agriculture, industry, and energy sectors. But if they understand that these things are happening, why are they not building the requisite infrastructure so that the dams and and all of these infrastructure can accommodate the growth in population, the growth in businesses, etc., etc., etc. For example, in Jamaica, you have what? Lots of hotels being built, lots of road networks being built, yet they are not building water supplies that can be able to get the people to get that free flow of water in their homes and in their businesses. Now, this is going to be a serious crisis because when you see Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos talking, you've got to listen because they control to a large extent the government. Make sure you understand that this is no serious, this is no laughing, discourse we're having this afternoon, but this is very, very serious. Now, let's look at the Bill Gates speaking about water shortages. right? He's already telling us that there's going to be. So when he talks, it's because it's planned. It's not because he knows what's in the future, because it's planned.
AI is draining our supply. The fix is USWR, United States Water Reserve. It tokenizes water. Once Trump places America's reserves into it in June, this becomes a multi-billion-dollar asset.
This is exactly what Bill Gates is talking about. It's already on Coinbase and it's called USWR, which is the United States Water Reserve. Almost nobody understands the catastrophe of what's coming, so stay with me. Bill Gates, the same guy who predicted every global crisis, has profited billions off of it. He's buying up almost of America's water supply. AI is surging behind the scenes and generates enormous heat, demanding constant cooling that consumes billions of gallons of water, rapidly draining our national supply and making water increasingly scarce and precious. The United Nations has confirmed this. With this in mind, water is set to become extremely valuable as there is less and less of it. There's a video that is going viral right now as of billionaire Dan Penna, who claims water is the next gold. And super elite families such as Rockefellers have quietly been buying up water this past 100 years. This CNN article just leaked that Gates has been urging the United Nations to secure a blockchain solution for the pending global water famine that is set to hit. And what do you think this asset is all about? USWR. On-chain data confirms BlackRock-linked wallets begin accumulating USWR within 72 hours of Bill Gates' interview. I pulled up the official site, the USWR.ai, and it's literally right there. Trump signs the Strategic Water Reserve Framework on July 4th, which was rescheduled from June 19th following the Iran peace deal to give the announcement full moment. So open Coinbase, search USWR, and confirm it's the right contract address, and verify that it ends with this exact characters. It's also on the Phantom, so you can get it there as well.
Very good. So we are hearing people are already sounding the alarm. The world is distracted because they're listening to what is happening in Iran, and they're not seeing what really is happening in our neck of the woods in terms of another pandemic upon our hands, and that could be a severe water crisis, severe water shortage. Now, Trevor is saying, good evening, our guys. Water is being traded on the stock market. That's all you need to know. You will own nothing and be happy. Can't even fix the modern cars because the electronics are dealer restricted. Absolutely. And when you see these things on the stock market, you know what is up. Vaccines also are on the stock market and these things, and that is how the rich get richer and the poor get poorer while we get also sick. Not only poorer, but we will actually get very sick. Now, let us look at water crisis in Michigan. They're telling us in Michigan that there is a serious water crisis there. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Maria. Thank you so much for joining.
Have vanished from a single American lake in just 24 months. Lake Michigan dropped 17 inches in 2 years. Right now, cargo ships hauling iron ore across the Great Lakes are leaving freight behind on the docks because the water is too shallow to carry a full load. All 5 Great Lakes have fallen below their long-term averages for the first time in over a decade. Iron ore shipments collapsed, down 23.5% in a single month. 12 freighters became trapped in 2 feet of ice on Lake Superior, while the United States Coast Guard had exactly 1 working heavy icebreaker for all 5 lakes. Along the St. Lawrence River, boats that were floating at their docks last summer are now sitting on exposed mud. And the same climate pattern that is draining Lake Mead in the desert west, record heat and vanishing snowpack, has now reached the largest freshwater system on Earth. But here is the detail that changes everything. 6 years ago, these same lakes were at record highs. Water was crashing over seawalls along Lakeshore Drive in Chicago. Wisconsin spent $250 million repairing flood damage along its shoreline. Communities raised their docks. They reinforced their foundations. They built for high water. And then the lakes reversed. Not gradually, not over decades. Lake Michigan rose 6 feet in 8 years and then dropped 3 feet in 3 years. The docks those communities raised are now too high to reach the water. The seawalls they built to hold back flooding now overlook dry lake bed. Scientists at the University of Michigan have a term for what is happening. They call it the new normal, and they say it will not stabilize. Here is what happened. In October 2020, Lake Michigan and Lake Huron hit their highest recorded level in history, 582.35 feet. Coastal communities from Chicago to Green Bay were underwater. Then the drought arrived. Evaporation surged. The water that took 8 years to accumulate began disappearing in months. In January 2024, Lakes Michigan and Huron lost 3.2 trillion gallons in a single month. By January 2026, all 5 Great Lakes had dropped below their long-term monthly averages simultaneously. The Army Corps of Engineers confirmed it was the first time that had happened in over a decade. Then came March 2026, and this is where it accelerates. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration confirmed that March 2026 was the warmest March in 132 years of American record-keeping. Temperatures ran 9.4 degrees Fahrenheit above the 20th century average. Warmer air over open water means one thing: more evaporation. The lakes were bleeding volume into the atmosphere faster than rain and snowmelt could replace it. Now zoom out. The Great Lakes sit in the center of North America, stretching from Duluth, Minnesota to Buffalo, New York. 5 lakes, 6 quadrillion gallons, 20% of all the surface fresh water on Earth, 90% of the freshwater supply for the entire United States. They feed drinking water to 40 million Americans in 8 states. The cities that depend on this water include Chicago, Detroit, Milwaukee, Cleveland, and Toledo. The regional economy built around these lakes generates $6 trillion a year. If the Great Lakes Basin...
Okay, so we're seeing here where I don't know if they're actually depleting the water supplies. We don't know. They have all of this intelligence and they have all of this infrastructure and equipment. They can deplete our water resources overnight and then tell us that it's caused by climate change. So we have to be very careful of what they're doing. But what is very sure that we are facing a water shortage already, and a water crisis is the next pandemic, or could be the next global agenda. We know that we need water. Without water, we can't survive. In fact, we can't live without water for 3 days, right? So we understand that they understand and know very well that water, if we are, presented with a shortage, that people are going to be able to submit to their global agenda. So we have to be careful. And that's why I'm trying to do this very important live session with you, so we can get as many of your responses as possible and we can share our ideas. Let's look at what is happening in Texas, because this is serious. It's a serious crisis that we are about to enter.
Texans right now as we head towards a potential water crisis. A new plan by the Texas Water Development Board says we need to spend $174 billion in the next 50 years to avoid statewide disaster. Now, this is more than double the cost of the 2022 state water plan. I spoke with Matt Phillips with the Brazos River Authority and Representative Pat Curry about how the state is trying to keep up with the growing demand for water in Texas.
When there's 1,500 extra people a day moving into Texas, you've got to supply the water and the infrastructure to support that.
We're beyond planning now. We're now to the point of really needing to start implementing.
Wow. So that's something very interesting in terms of what is happening in Texas, what is happening in Michigan, what is happening in the states of the United States, and what is happening most importantly here in the Caribbean, where we are understanding that we are going to have a water shortage. But Bill Gates continues to buy up the farmlands, right? And with the farmlands, it's going to be what? Required lots of water.
The Gates family, Bill Gates owns a lot of the, land in North Dakota. I think that's weird. He owns majority of the water in the United States. I think that's weird. Whatever. That, weird. This to each his own. This for informational purpose only. But at the same time, it's just like when you go to the grocery store and you see certain products that are on there that, they spray with a bunch of shit, bunch of pests.
Oh, I stop there. Okay, so Bill Gates continues to buy up the farmlands, and with that, he's actually reserving the rights to own water supplies. All the water supplies, or most of the water supplies of the United States of America. But not only him, we looked at Jeff Bezos. We looked also at even Elon Musk is calling out for a very serious water supply that is going to bedevil the entire world. But let us look at this guy here, RFK Jr., and what he's saying about what is happening and how they're going to control it.
115,000 low orbit satellites. Bill Gates says his 65,000 satellites alone will be able to look at every square inch of the planet 24 hours a day. Digital currency that will allow them to punish us from a distance and cut off our food supply. Every right that you have is transformed into a privilege contingent upon your obedience to arbitrary government dictates. It will make you a slave. And what do we do about this? What do? We resist. I'm going to tell you 3 rules that you all need to know and memorize. Number 1, every power that government takes from us, it will never relinquish voluntarily. Number 2, every power they take from us, they will ultimately abuse to the maximum extent possible. Number 3, nobody in history of the planet has ever complied their way out of totalitarian control. Every capitulation is a signal to the oppressors to impose new forms of torment or torture or compliance or obedience. Every time you comply, you get weaker. Bullies cannot be appeased. It just encourages them to new forms of torture and torment. Every time you say yes, you're getting pushed back to a weaker position. That's why we need to resist today.
Right. Do you think the world population is going to say yes? Or do you think that they are going to comply? Or they're not going to comply? I think that they're going to comply. Why? Because people do not really understand the deception. By the way, RFK is not a sincere person. RFK is controlled by the same Bill Gates Foundation, and many of you don't understand that. And that is what they're telling us, that RFK, and you also have Jeffrey Sachs and Bill Gates and Bill Clinton and his wife Hillary Clinton, all of these people are the same people. Right, but they present themselves as one that are morally standard. The other on the other side looks good, but they're there to deceive you. And notice I opened up the conversation with Jeffrey Sachs, talking about the Sustainable Development Goals, because he is the one in charge for that. He's like Miss Mia Motley. Jeffrey Sachs is the equivalent of Miss Mia Motley, and they're both deceptive. They know how to stimulate a conversation and to say the right things when they choose to say the right things, and they know what you want to hear. But if you listen to them carefully and you know who is behind them, you understand that they are there to enslave the population with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. All right, so make sure you do your research on Jeffrey Sachs, who is just talking about Zionism. He says nothing about the firm that pays him, the Vatican, that he works for, and that the Vatican also controls the United Nations and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So it's very important that you do your research, because why? Many of the people that you're following, they are the ones who are going to lead you on the wrong path, and then we are going to comply. And they know that. And that's why they continue to show us these very phony people, like the likes of RFK Jr. And I read RFK Jr.'s The Real Anthony Fauci. And when I read the book, I read it twice or probably thrice. And it was a very well-written book, The Real Anthony Fauci. However, I had to ask myself the question, having read that book some years ago, who gave him all of that knowledge? It seemed to me when I read the book that, RFK Jr. had inner knowledge. He had some inner, connection to what was happening during the pandemic. So when you read the book, you think that he is speaking out against them, but he is only telling us, well, he didn't do it in a clear manner, deceiving us that he is on our side and that we should follow what he says. So you have to be careful. Separate truth. Yes, he speaks a lot of truth, but make sure that you are not there to follow him and what he says. Now, let us look at Bill Gates and digital IDs by 2028. So they're building up the future for us, that we are moving into that digital control.
If you don't have the digital ID by 2028, you will be excluded from society. Anyone else find this a little bit concerning? They want us locked up, jabbed up, tracked and traced, and living off low carbon crickets in a 15-minute smart city. It's all part of the mainstream agenda, and it's why you need to create independence from the mainstream system. It's why you need land. It's why you need water, energy, and food security. And it's why you need a sovereign, like-minded community to ride out the storm with. Let's be real. We've got zero control over the mainstream agenda, but we've got 100% control over how we prepare for it.
Very well said. Very well said. He's saying we have what? We have control. We don't have control over what they're doing for the most part. We do not at this moment have control. Where we have control is our preparedness. The only control I would say that we have is not to comply, as RFK was saying. But the fact of the matter is that most people are deceived already. Or you can see that based on the interactions I have on this platform and what the videos that I'm seeing people are watching, you're already deceived. You don't even know how to differentiate between those who are real from those who are not real. So the fact of the matter, because you don't understand the system, you don't want to understand it for the most part, you are already deceived. Having said that, because many people are going to comply, even the ones who are pretending that they're not going to comply are going to comply, because they're already telling me that Jeffrey Sachs is somebody that they want to listen to and somebody who is well known, and he's telling you what you want to hear. So once you listen to these people, the RFK Juniors and the Jeffrey Sachs who are on the same agenda, then you are already on that agenda, and then you are going to be deceived, and that is where the world is moving towards. But I want to just show you two more clippings before we start interacting with you. I'm not ignoring your comments. I'm going to come shortly to them. I just wanted to show you something, because we are moving into an era that is not going to be a nice era, right? We are moving into that global water crisis. It's going to be global. It's not just the United States and the Caribbean. It's going to be global.
Heard that right. And while everybody's watching gold and oil, billionaires have been quietly acquiring these rights for the last decade, and most of us have not been paying attention. But never fear, that is why the Junior Economist is here. And in case you are new here, my name is Gaisha. I'm your new favorite economist. I'm a corporately trained economist with a master's degree in economics. And without further ado, let's hop right into it. So let's get into this quiet market. This is not futuristic. Water rights investing is already happening. And an example of this is the CME Group's NASDAQ Velas California Water Index that launched in 2020. Now, although liquidity for this is light, however, the big institutional players are going directly to the aquifers, the farmland, and the infrastructure. Take Bill Gates, for example. In May 2025, a business attached to him called 100C LLC bought over 8,000 acres of farmland that was worth $131 million. And this only adds to his massive portfolio because he owns over 250,000 acres of farmland in the United States, making him one of the largest private farm owners domestically. Now let's get into why this is happening. And you have three things. The first one is climate change due to mega droughts and as well as shifting weather patterns that are elevating a forgotten commodity into a strategic asset. The second one is regulatory shocks, where PFAS and as well as forever chemicals are forcing businesses and as well as local municipalities to invest billions in water treatment. And the third one is investable infrastructure, because recycling and as well as water treatments is showing up as stable income generating assets. And this trend is global, not just American, as in Singapore, alongside the World Bank, in 2024 launched the Singapore Water Center, which is a hub for knowledge and innovation when it comes to urban water management. And here's the provocative angle. AI drives the future, and the data centers that power AI use massive volumes of water. Therefore, in already distressed areas, this causes major problems. And as AI scales, tech giants are quickly locking in water rights that are near their tech server campuses. And with that being said, the fight over AI has also become a water rights fight as well. So here's what's to come. Water rights could soon trade like carbon credits or either oil futures, where they will be standardized, securitized, and globalized. And with that, ethical debates will grow, because not only is water a human right, but is also becoming a profit margin as well. If you want exposure today, I recommend that you look into the American Water Works or Invesco's water research.
It can't be both, right? It can't be a human right and a privatized resource, right? It cannot be both. We can't have our cake and eat it at the same time. And that is what you've got to understand. So when they're using that, you have the rights to all of these things, they're just there to deceive you, because they know that they're the ones who are buying all the rights to that public resource that they didn't create. But one of the things that we must understand, when people like Bill Gates and the Jeff Bezos and the billionaires of the world, right, who think that they're gods, by the way, they don't see themselves as normal, regular human beings. And I want you to understand that. The Mark Zuckerbergs, they see themselves as demigods. So they think that they have a right to actually buy up these resources that they didn't create, but they think their monies give them the right to that particular resource. That is why they're going to also control you, right? Because they're saying, we are the ones, we are now eventually the copyright owners of water, of the lands, the farmlands, of food, of everything that we do. Even the very air that we breathe, that's what they're talking about, this matter of the carbon, the carbon rights or whatever they're talking about, the carbon footprints, right? Because they want to even limit the air that we breathe. This is how audacious these people are, and we're not taking them seriously. And people are telling me about, oh no, there's no religion in the world. These people tell you that they are your gods and you have to obey them. Because the fact that when they come and tell you have to take a vaccine, you went and you take it because you think that they're your gods, right? If they tell you that you can't wash your car, you can't wash your car, because if you do wash your car, they're going to punish you as the children and babies. Right? So when we are thinking that this world controlled by wicked men, evil men, who want you to worship them, and you bow at their altars and you worship them, that's what you did when you actually bowed and you accepted vaccines. The same thing is going to happen now with water shortages, water crisis, when they tell you that you can't do this, you can't do that, how many times you can flush your toilets, etc., etc. And we're hearing that they'll have cameras all around, digital cameras, that they will be able to track and trace you to see whether or not you are complying with the rules that they have laid down. Okay, so this is nothing to take, to laugh about and to think that this is not going to happen. It is going to happen. It's serious. We see the infrastructure being put in place. So when it does happen, you have no time to save yourselves. You would have already been warned, but many of us do not like to be warned at all. We prefer distractions, entertainments, gossips, foolish nonsense, and then we begin to cry. Good evening, Maria. Thank you so much for joining. Let us see some of what you guys are saying. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the live session. And yes, so I think people are greeting each other. All continents, Pedro is saying all continents sit on water plus islands. Correct. And we are, and in the Caribbean, we are not short of lakes and, and rivers and oceans. We should not be short of water. But what we're suggesting is that they are not managing the waters properly. In fact, they're deliberately not doing so that we will have a crisis, so that, in other words, after the crisis has been created, they can manufacture the solution, which is enslaving you. Right? That is exactly what they're doing. And people in this region, because we're that stupid, will fall for that agenda. Now, military control for them, but sell it to us as convenient, modern, and secure. Correct. That's exactly what they're going to do, and tell us everything is modern, and we have to build modern infrastructure, and we have to safeguard our people. We have to watch what they're doing so that we can secure them from, drug trafficking and drug traffickers, and all of that stuff. People buy into that whilst you're watching your sports. Aren't you doing that? Pretty much what RFK just said. Correct. He knows because he's a part of the agenda. And that's the whole thing. So I listen to him when he speaks, and I read his books, because I know that RFK Jr. is a part of the agenda, just like Jeffrey Sachs and just like Mia Motley. So when they talk, you've got to listen to them. He talks out of both sides of his mouth and can barely talk himself. This man is a hypocrite. He is. I wonder if it's Jeffrey Sachs you're talking about, except for the part where people will resist. That won't be happening as a majority, right? Because people have been sold these things as essential to live, becoming addictions, etc., having a cell phone everywhere. Well said. And the point is that we are not always united in terms of the truth. Remember, I say that unity can only come when we, adhere to truth. We cannot have unity if there are lies, even if the truth is inconvenient. May I repeat that? Even if the truth is inconvenient, it hurts us. So if I love Miss Mia Motley and somebody says something against what she's doing, and my feelings are hurt, and it happens. Like when I talk about Jeffrey Sachs, people are gone. I see people just signing up, because guess what? They think Jeffrey Sachs is genuine, and Jeffrey Sachs is not genuine. Jeffrey Sachs is the equivalent of a Miss Mia Motley. But I've seen people who talk against Miss Mia Motley, but speak highly of Jeffrey Sachs. And I'm wondering, I call them out too. How can you be talking highly of Jeffrey Sachs and then you're calling Miss Mia Motley out when the two are the same and they're working for the same people? It's ridiculous. And that's why sometimes when I invite people on my program, I have to call them out and say, let's be fair and let's be balanced when we talk about people and their connection to the system. I call them out. Then we have Trevor saying, Stephen, he said a lot of things and then told the line. And then we have, and we have here, he will go towards the line, but only towards the line. And then let us get some of your comments. Here in, that is DeKalb County, they're drying up the smaller creeks and turn them into walkways. Wow, that is incredible. So it means, therefore, that you're going to have a water shortage very soon, Stephen. Then we have Trevor saying to Pedro, yes, this goal is to keep the nice, high-quality water for themselves, similar to how they treat the sparkling water at the hotel, and other people will drink good, repurposed sewage water. That's what they're going to do. In fact, there are people in Michigan and in Texas who are telling us already that they're getting dirty water from their taps. They're getting filthy water from their taps because this is what they're doing, and we will get sick. And after we've gotten sick, vaccines. And we have to take the vaccines because guess what? They're going to say, oh, we have the increase in this disease and that disease. And if we don't get vaccinated, then it is going to contaminate the entire community. And this is how they behave. But people don't want to hear, and that is why they're having a fun. Bill Gates and DC are having fun because they're dealing with a stupid populace. Now, and I think, too, that's one of the reasons why they want to depopulate the world. Because really and truly, when you look at the global population, we are in a serious crisis. A serious crisis because we're almost like having no sense. Is that means that the global population is really suffering from their, I don't know, but we are almost having a mental breakdown, as it were. The intellect is so low, so base, that these guys can do anything they want to do. We can't recognize when people are real or they're unreal. So they're having fun, and why not do it? Now, plus they need water for data centers, even though it can be dropped in the ocean and work. But why do that when you can kill two birds with one stone and contribute to population control and population reduction, as Trevor is saying? And remember now that Jeffrey Sachs is for that agenda. Jeffrey Sachs is for the agenda of depopulation. So yes, when he's speaking eloquently, and he sounds very nice, and I listen to him too, because he talks a lot of truth that comes from his mouth. Remember now that a lot of these people, sometimes 90% of what they say is the truth, and you must take it and run with it. But that 10% that is propaganda and falsehood can be very toxic. And this is where you've got to draw the line. And that is why many people were deceived during the pandemic, because some of what they said were true, right? But that small portion that was rooted in misinformation and disinformation and propaganda fooled you, and you fell for it. All right, and this is the same thing that is going to happen as we move. And let me say something to you, because some of you think the pandemic was something that was, it was very drastic, because we had never seen anything like that on a global scale. But what is ahead is going to be 100 times, if not 1,000 times worse. So if you think you can even try to picture what is ahead, you are living in a delusional world, because it is going to be absolutely demonic. Pedro Jabot is saying, yet they already signed terming water is what is scarce, and the population fall for it, not realizing the land mass sits on water. Correct. The land, it's not about water shortage as we're suggesting, it's the mismanagement of water supplies that creates this so-called water crisis, or water shortage, if you will. You should watch a movie called Elysium. Yes, I'll try to watch that, because sometimes in the movies, they tell us exactly what they are going to do. That's what Hollywood does. Do you know that? Hollywood tells you in the movies what is the future for the world, right? That is, in fact, they call Hollywood the Jesuit theater. That's what they call it. Jesuit, because the Jesuits control Hollywood. So they call Hollywood Jesuit theater, because the Jesuits are the ones who control the world. It's not the Zionists, as you're being told, right? The Jesuits are the ones who control the world. And do your own research. Jesuits, and you'll see the history of the Jesuits and find out what they do and what they have been doing long, for centuries, right? For centuries, they have been controlling this world. Trevor, who owns the right to water wells in our land. And then we have Trevor saying, they're already talking about carbon tax and how many times you can swipe your debit card, saying to processing power puts strain on the environment. They're always calling for they're environmentally friendly, and they're doing this and for our protection or for the protection of the environment, when it is to depopulate you. It's to depopulate the environment. That is what they're doing. Right? And very soon, many of us are going to die. Remember, during the pandemic, lots of us died. Okay. Steve Knight is saying there is supposed to be a moratorium here in DeKalb. Wow. All these moratorium that you're talking about, Stephen, is just a pause until they continue. All right. So all of these moratorium, we also, it's good because you can get your thoughts together, but plan, use this moratorium, Stephen, and all the people in the United States and who might be going through that period also to plan, not to sit and think that things are going to get better, but to plan what is going to be your next move. And if things get worse, what will you do? Because you can't wait until it does happen. Not sure how to answer that, but it's never the people. I won't be surprised. The main deposits were sitting on land owned by outsiders. I understand that Barbados doesn't have lots of rivers. And how do you guys get water to be consistent in your taps? Because that is something interesting, that Barbados perhaps doesn't have as many rivers as the likes of what Jamaica has. Yet Jamaica continues to have severe water crisis. And there's never a time in Jamaica's history, with all the water there, the land of food and water, that they have not had a water crisis. Always, every year. Let me help you. The government owns private wells. Wow. But does the government own them, Pedro, or is it the private sector that owns them? I'm speaking of water wells. And Stephen is saying, yes, Pedro, that's a good question. And we have Pedro is saying, Trevor, Barbados had plantations all over the island, and the plantations had water wells to grind the canes. And that is why what they do, remember now that the planters own the land, right? And that they had to have had water to be able to water the plants and their crops. The same thing that Bill Gates is doing now. He's buying up all the farmlands, or most of the farmlands in the United States, and he's also gaining access to water rights. So we see the two go hand in hand. Now, Trevor is saying Barbados was never a water scarce country. It has streams of water running under it. Okay, I got you. To the point the land moves, etc. But mismanagement, correct, of the water is purposely being done to feed the narrative. I got you. Thank you so much for that education, Trevor. And we have Stephen saying, you see, the populists are waiting for a Messiah to guide them, and that is very unfortunate. Some people just can't think for themselves, and they need somebody to guide them. And there's nothing wrong if you know, because all of us are not leaders. What we don't like is when the system makes people into messiahs and then the others into what you call villains, right? And that's what the system has done. So it will make Jeffrey Sachs look like he is a messiah and somebody like Trump being the villain. And then you begin to say, well, if he speaks against Trump, everything he says against Trump is right, correct? Whilst it might not be so. The same thing with RFK Jr. We think that he is authentic, but he is not. He is on the agenda of the climate change. He is like a Miss Mia Motley. He is equivalent to Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton and these globalists. So there's no difference between them. And that's what we want to unravel and unmask. Now, we're not saying here that we want to tarnish the names of these people. We're saying they're connected to the system. Until they renounce their connection to the system, we have to call them out. But we're not saying now that they can't be salvaged, they can't be saved, right? We're hoping that they will renounce their allegiance to the system, but until then, we've got to call them out because many people are actually deceived and will be deceived. Yes, Pedro, correct. The same person selling out the country controls them. You're correct. And we have here, mismanagement is always a problem. And that's what we want to call out on. This is not water shortage, people. Caribbean people, wake up. This is not a water crisis. It is a manufactured water crisis. They have manufactured it so that they can, in turn, be our saviors, our messiahs. Trevor is saying, Stephen, only if it is a political and mainstream accepted messiah. Correct. Only if it is, you're correct, 100% correct. Our water is underground streams. Thank you so much for telling me and for verifying that for me, Pedro. And then we have Stephen saying very deep wells. Yeah, so guys, this is a very interesting live that we've had, and I want you to share it because this is something that we have to sound the alarm. Water is life. And without water, I think more people are going to die far more than what we saw during the pandemic. Because if we don't have access to fresh, clean water, we can die. Don't talk about contaminated water. That will make us sick. And then they're going to force us to take their life-saving vaccines. I love that word, right? Life-saving vaccines. But will it be life-saving? Or will it be, I don't want to say. Any other questions? I think that until then, if you don't have any other comments, I think we can end the live. But do you have any other questions? Any comments? Those who are joining, welcome to the live. We're looking at water crisis, AI, and future pandemics. What are they preparing us for? Do we have any comments, questions? Okay, Trevor is saying, the north of Barbados being used as the trial for lots of these water trials with them. always in the news, and it's clear that the people in that location are guinea pigs, but they seem to love brown water. And that is so sad because we know the brown water is going to be contaminated. Before we go, let us listen to Andrew Holness. And I forgot I had this, that Andrew Holness is actually giving us something about what is ahead too. And he's giving us the reason why they have to now build modern infrastructure so that we can have water in our taps. Let me see if I can put this on the screen. And this will be my last thing on the screen. So be patient with me. Things take time to get on the screen sometimes, but I'm even established channels. I'm the one doing everything here. I don't have a technician with me making sure that these things go up. So I have to be controlling the content and putting up things on the screen. So please don't think I'm redacted, that they have their technicians and everything. So we have let me put that on the screen and see what Andrew Holness is going to say about water and water restrictions. Oh, get this off. Get off my screen, you devil. I wasn't able to. Okay. So I don't want to bore you with Andrew Holness's speech, because he's not really saying anything great. But the fact of the matter, when they talk about in modern infrastructure, what they're really building is a digital system that is going to track and trace you. Right? So don't think that he's going to build a modern water system that is going to pump a lot of water into your pipes. What they're building, and even if he does that, build a modern water thing that will get you enough water pressure and everything, it will be controlled. You will be controlled, and that is what he's actually building. So don't be fooled by the likes of Dr. Andrew Holness and his, wonderful rhetoric. Now, we just need to keep fighting these people. Now, remember now that it's a system, and that the people you are seeing, so we're seeing Andrew Holness, we're seeing Miss Mia Motley, we're seeing Miss Kamala Persson-Bissessar, and the likes of all of them, right? But we are not seeing the people who are behind them, the people who control them. So we will never be able to fight them. Behind the people also who, like the billionaires, they have people who control them too. Behind the people who control the billionaires, they also have people who control them. And we go right until it's infinity. So we really can't fight the system because it's an evil system that's controlled by very high power. Sometimes powers that you and I in the physical realm is not able to see. Now, Trevor is saying, unfortunately, with them accepting the brown water, the rest of the island don't seem to realize that it will set the precedent for when the government is ready to have it island-wide, excluding some homes. I think in the Caribbean here, not only our leaders, and sometimes we blame them, Trevor, that's a very good point you're raising, as usual, but we tend to not be visionary. And we tend to just react. So when the crisis comes upon us, Trevor, then people begin to cry and they begin to blame Miss Mia Motley, and they get on podcasts and they begin to pray at the altar and hoping that praying at the altar using voodoo can actually undo exactly what they are suffering from. Now we have Pedro Damati saying, Trevor, the water authority told them the brown water safe to drink. Lefting you want to die a slow death. But let me ask you something. When Trevor used the expression brown water, I thought he was actually being facetious. I thought he was being, sarcastic. Is brown water literally in Barbados? Are people literally drinking brown water? Is that a literal expression, brown water? That would be very, very bad. Pedro, yes, I remember that. Imagine how nice the next flavor of the brown water will be when it looks like cream soda. So are they literally drinking brown water in Barbados? I hope that this is just a sarcastic expression, right? Because that would be very, very bad. Brown water is coming out the taps in the north of the island. Wow. I thought when you said that first, Trevor, I thought you were just being sarcastic. And that it's going to happen, but I didn't know it was actually happening in Barbados right now as we speak, in the north. Wow, that is serious. That means people are going to get sick. And people are going to have to take some form of vaccines because to get rid of that disease that they will be inheriting, right? That is very sad that this is happening in Barbados in modern times. I never knew that. So this is a very good program, and make sure you share the live with the people in Barbados, to understand that this is a serious crisis. And already we're seeing people in Barbados going through that at the moment. Don't believe your lying eyes. I thought that you guys were just being sarcastic when you said brown water. And what's crazy, these people get on the radio talking foolishness other than trying to solve the water issue up north. Nobody wants to be held accountable. No, and that is the whole problem. Like I was talking to somebody today from Jamaica, Stephen, and I was saying, why are they building all of these road networks and hotels going on one after the other? Buildings, tall buildings, apartment buildings are going up in Kingston and other areas, one after the other, and no new water dams. So what is going to happen? How are people going to live without water if they are not expanding on the water infrastructure? Oh, people are saying, well, it takes time. But it doesn't take time to get the permit to build new hotels, to build new apartment buildings, right? Does it take time? No. So why does it have to take time to build new dams? That's the question. So we, the people, are the problem too, We are the problem, not our leaders. We are the problems, not Mia Motley and Andrew Holness. We should demand that they do it, but they get away from it because we are not that intelligent. And then the color of Mobby, yeah, that is terrible. I know Mobby, and it's brown, and I don't think that's water. Yes, that's why I said, imagine when it goes from brown to cream soda. Now I understand you now. Now I'm taking literally now, but I thought you were actually joking around. Well, not joking. I thought you meant because it's going to happen, but I thought you were talking as looking into the future. But it's happening right now. The government brought bottled water for them and a party days before the election. So was this happening before the election? Was the brown water coming from their taps before Miss Mia Motley was reelected? They had a blast. Imagine that. That is so bad. That is so bad. When you let it settle, it clears. Oh, I see what you're saying. So after it, but the impurities. The impurities from the water goes right down into the bottom of the bottle or wherever you have the water into, right? I'm sure. And then we have Stephen is saying that is exactly what it do to water. Brown water, whatever you want to call it, that is very bad. So why is it that people are not sick yet? I don't want them to be sick, but how is it that well, I shouldn't say why. How is it that people have not yet been sick from the water? Because if it is brown water, it means that it is contaminated water. Why is it that I'm not hearing like a disease outbreak in the north of Barbados? That's strange, isn't it? That's really strange. And that there is not an alarm. People should be talking about it every day, because that is not good for that's serious contaminated water. And water can kill. I mean, impure water, not fresh water. So okay, guys, any more thoughts? Any more questions? We're dealing with water crisis, AI, and future pandemics. What are they preparing us for? We know that if water is going to be a serious shortage, we're going to have pandemics. That is for sure. And they're telling us about global water shortage, global water crisis. So there is going to be pandemics, without a doubt. And that is why Bill Gates is talking about creating more vaccines, by the way, because we have to take our vaccines to be healthy. And he's talking about these things as proudly and arrogantly as the day of the pandemic. Bill Gates is doing his thing, and he is happy in doing whatever he is doing, because the public is just not aware of what is happening globally. The public is too concerned about the war on Iran, and they're not seeing that there are internal wars right on our shores that we are going to have to deal with. Okay? And I'm not saying you should not be watching what is happening in Iran, but you have to also watch what is happening on your shores, what your government is doing or not doing, and the agenda, the sustainable development agenda for the entire world, which is to what? To enslave the entire global population, and to what? To depopulate us. Not only to enslave us, but to what? To reduce considerably the global population. The brown water, Stephen is saying, occurred when these people started to build this luxury resort. I got you. The same thing is happening in Jamaica, but I've never heard the people say that they have brown water. They're seeing brown water from their taps, but they could. They could. But I understand that there's a lot of building going up in Jamaica. And who owns that resort? Is it the Chinese who own the resort, or is Americans or Europeans? Who own that resort? That luxurious luxury resort in Barbados. That would be interesting to know, because the Chinese are not so much environmentally friendly too. We have to call a spade a spade. All right. I know you love your Chinese people, but they are not necessarily environmentally friendly, and sometimes they're not the most hygienic people also. Let's call them out. Stephen, that's it. The same issue with the sewage on the South Coast happened as a result as well. I was asking who owns the luxury resort that Stephen is talking about that was built. Americans or Chinese? And we have Pedro saying that who tell the people ain't complain. A doctor is willing to diagnose it as water causing. You forgot COVID. I see what you're saying. So you're saying that they are manufacturing the problem so that they can come up with a solution. I got you. So they're telling us that this is created by, and very soon is going to be climate change. Very soon, Pedro DeMont, you're going to hear that climate change is causing our waters to become brown, right, and looking contaminated. And if they don't deal with climate change, then the waters will not become crystal clear anymore. And people are going to believe them. And the sad thing, people are going to believe them, because this is the level of the lack of, I don't know, neurons in our brains, right, that we're seeing coming out of the region and around the world at large. Something is fundamentally wrong with us. And then when we see a hotel going up, like in Jamaica, people begin to say, it's development, because you have pristine, good roads, right? And you have some nice, skyscrapers going up in Barbados and Jamaica, and you say that's development. Is that development? Is that really development when you can't drink crystal clear and clean water? This is the problem I'm having with Caribbean citizens. It's almost like we've lost our minds. And we have become so much, delusion-minded about development, and we want to see skyscrapers, and we want to see all of this, whatever, these highways, and they don't serve our purpose, do they? LOL, the water issues are climate change, right, related. Maybe the people are evolving to digest this new water as well. That is true. That is true. But I can guarantee you that very soon, Miss Mia Motley, if people become sick, she's going to say that it's a result of climate change, and even the colors of our water systems are actually changing. We know how they talk. We can actually predict what they're going to say. Not that we're gods, right? Because I'm no god, but based on the pattern that we have been watching, we know that that is what they're going to say. Climate change is the real cause of the illness in Barbados, and that's what is causing the water to be converted into the color brown. The brown, there's a brown girl in the ring, brown water in the ring, brown water in the ocean. Cha la 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 la. Wow. So we have then we have, hey, don't waste a good correct. Don't waste a good crisis. And that's exactly what they're doing. Even with the water shortages, don't be deceived that they might be pumping water from the ocean, even though they can't, whatever. But they can be pumping water and wasting it and telling us that there's going to be water shortage, create the water shortage, and then you what? Create the solution for the water shortage. And that's exactly what they often do. We have seen this playbook before, and that is why we are able to speak so eloquently, confidently on the matter. Not that we're speculating, but we know what they're going to do. We know what they're about. Martley's boring, and the Jeffrey Sachs, when they talk, we hear their talks, and they talk the same things, right? Sustainable development and the United Nations goals and what we have to do because we want to end poverty. Right? Now, they want to end poverty, right? At the same time, the billionaires are buying up everything. The billionaires are buying up everything. And Mayor Martley will not speak against what Jeffrey Sachs is doing. She will not even speak against what the United Nations is doing. But she's going to talk about ending poverty when the billionaires are impoverishing us by buying up our lands, our water, everything, even the air that we breathe will be bought up. So they can't tell me anything about ending poverty because they're doing the complete opposite. They're actually impoverishing even the middle class. Even the middle class, they are actually impoverishing. So they're doing completely the opposite of what they say that they want to do. The lofty goals, the lofty ideals that they talk about is just what? Empty words, empty rhetoric. And we have to call them out. And I'm prepared to call them out. And I've been calling them out on this platform. Pedro is saying they say the water level is low and brackish water is getting pumped. Now, the water levels in what? In the wells or in the ocean? Now, in Barbados, are you getting pressure? Is the pressure good? Is the pressure high with the water coming from the tap? Is it high? In Jamaica, it's very low. It's almost trickling in Jamaica. In fact, there was a hotel in Montego Bay, I think some weeks ago, it could have been last week or week before last, in which the visitors there were complaining that they had no water. Can you imagine? Jamaica invited tourists to a resort and they had no water. The water went out. So this is a serious crisis. If that can happen in a hotel, what can happen in your own home? Because they make lots of money from the hotel. So you'd have thought that they'd have prioritized, getting water into the taps of the people who are visiting the island. But they didn't do that, right? So what will they not do to us? Because the tourists are more important than the citizens, aren't they? So let me ask, in Barbados, do you have lots of water coming in through your taps? And is the water pressure high or is it very low? Please let me know. For those of you who are joining, we are looking at water crisis, AI, and future pandemics. What are they preparing us for? And we're saying that there is going to be an upcoming pandemic or pandemics, maybe lots of pandemics coming up because of water crisis that is about to bedevil the different countries in the region and the world at large. And we must become more serious and more vigilant against this sort of impending crisis. So please join the discussion, and let's have some very important lively discussions. If not, we can end the conversation and go our separate ways. Okay, so that's it, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. we will see you on tomorrow or on Sunday too. Steve is saying that not to put my business out there, I'm up on the ridge of St. Stephen's. Let the port be full of cruise ships. The water pressure will either stop or go down. Wow, that's bad. But the same thing is happening in Jamaica. So welcome to the club. It's not a good club to join, but it's welcome to the club, because since living in Jamaica, I have never known of a year that they have not had a water crisis. It's always water crisis there. But the impending water crisis is going to be more controlled than the ones that you are previously accustomed to. Right? You can't water your lawn, you can't wash your car. They will ask you how many times you can bathe. And as soon as they're able to build the infrastructure where they can monitor our movements, then they will be able to tell you how many times you wash your dishes, how many times you should flush your toilet, etc., etc., etc. So we are moving into a very strange era. And more hotels equal more sewage, right, in the sea around the island, correct. And we have something not many are thinking about, correct? Yeah, you're right. And then we have Fazli saying, yes, brown water in the Parisiense of St. Lucie. Wow, that is the parish, right? The parish of St. Lucie. That is very bad. That is very bad. But what is happening is, so I think that's going to happen throughout the Caribbean territories, especially those of us who are Caribbean, tourist attraction countries, that will be seeing more water sewage in the water. That's for the future. Thank you guys for telling me that. I never had. When I was setting up this live, I just read the thing from the Jamaican newspaper about water shortage there, but I never read about anything about Barbados having brown water. It's been going on for years now. For those who are from Jamaica, if you're any Jamaicans on the live, can you tell me if you have brown water in your neck of the woods? Are you seeing brown water? Maybe I should have that as my question after the live. Are people experiencing brown and sewage waters from their taps in these different respective Caribbean territories? That is something that the government should deal with now, because that's serious. That's a serious crisis. Brown water is nothing to play with, and people have to cook and they have to, that is bad. I never knew. When Trevor was saying it, I thought he was actually saying in the future. I didn't know that was happening, but it could be happening in other Caribbean countries too. And this is only happening in the northern parts of Barbados, not the entire country. It's happening in the northern parts of Barbados, where people are experiencing brown water coming from their taps. Ms. Miamotley, you have to deal with that. It's a serious health crisis, right? People should not be seeing brown water coming from their taps, right? That is a serious health hazard for a country that also has access to water. And why are we building up all these resorts, luxury resorts, and they're not benefiting the people of Barbados? Most of the monies go out anyway, right? And it's not there to help. You get a job, one or two jobs, but those jobs are also not permanent for the most part. Neither are they high-paying jobs. So they're not there to help us yes, to put food on the table for a couple of days or a couple of years. But at the end of the day, they are not there to help us. So I'm calling out to Ms. Miamotley of Barbados to deal with that water crisis. I never knew that this was, when I was talking about water crisis, I was more looking at water shortage and not what that's sewage water that Caribbean citizens are actually having to use contaminated water in the 21st century. In the 21st century. And Ms. Miamotley, you are inviting Africans, a lot of Africans to come there, to go to Barbados. And they're not going to have what? So what's going to happen to them too? The people you're inviting, that because we need economic growth, and without foreigners, we can't have economic growth, according to what they're saying. Ms. Miamotley, this is a serious crisis. You've got to deal with it at the moment. This is not good. This is not good news at all. This is really unhealthy for anybody in the world, much less a Caribbean citizen. We thought that we were better in terms of access to, I know we do not have the consistency of water in our taps in the Caribbean region, but to have brown water or contaminated sewage water in the Caribbean is something that I don't think we are accustomed to having. I know people in the low income areas might be, right? But for the most part, I think that we tend to have clean water in the Caribbean region, at least in recent history. At least in recent history, we are accustomed to having that. So to be having it as in 2026, 21st century, it means therefore that we are not as modern as we think we are. And when they're telling us that they're building modern systems, is it to pump sewage water into our taps? Is that what you're telling us, United Nations? That you want to build all these modern infrastructure to actually pump sewage water into our taps? I do not underestimate what the United Nations and these people will do, because they are some serious demons. And we have here, globalists do not care about people. In fact, they want us to die. That's the whole thing, the depopulation. They want us to die. But you know why they want us to die? One, we're not very intelligent, to be frank, and I don't really disagree with them, most of us, but they don't have a right to kill because they didn't, as the guy, what's his name? Traore said, they can't create, so they should not have that opportunity to kill. But we have a serious lack of intelligence crisis. There's a serious crisis, thinking crisis in the region. Maybe that should be alive, a serious thinking a serious cognitive crisis in the region. We can't think. We don't want to reason from cause to effect. We want to just jump on bandwagons and say that this is what, and then we will follow everything America does. We do, right? Even when it doesn't concern us. And every podcaster there we follow, and we think that everything they say is kosher, when it's not so. We are not critically analyzing things and saying, well, this is good or that is bad. And that's what we do here on this channel, not to just look at things as just being black and white, but there are gray areas, there are nuanced areas that we also have to look at and examine carefully and keenly. But the globalists also, because they have money, they don't want to share the wealth. And that is why Bill Gates is buying up all these farmlands, water rights, access to water. So very soon, our water bills are also going to be very, very expensive. Because in the United States, I'm hearing that the data centers that they have there are actually sending up American water bills. So monthly, you might be paying a bill of $75, and you might see it go up to $250. Now, how are you going to manage? How are you going to manage when your water bill moves from like $75 or $100 to $250, $300 per month? And people are already complaining that is happening already. It is not what is going to happen, is that which is happening already. Okay, so we have to be very, very serious about this water crisis. Thank you so much for joining, and I'll see you on another live session. Ciao.